I'm Professor Susan McRoy from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I'm a professor of computer science, and I'm here to talk to you today about a project that we did last year for the Thompson Center on Leadership Policy. We're happy to talk to you about our work, and I worked on this with a graduate student who is going to introduce himself too.
Hi, my name is Apoorv Prasad. I joined UWM as a master's student in computer science. I worked on this project for my master's thesis under the Thompson Center for Leadership.
Project was called Empowering People with Cognitive Disabilities to Live Independently by Supporting Their Self-Management of Food and Related Expenses. The goal of this project was to help people who may suffer from short-term memory loss, confusion, or an inability to concentrate. These problems can occur for many reasons, including chronic attention disorders, brain injuries like concussion, age-related memory loss, side effects from cancer treatment, or side effects even from COVID-19. Some of these problems are referred to as problems with executive functioning. The target task that we're interested in helping was enabling these folks to eat better. What does that mean? Well, we want to make sure that they eat a balance of nutrients between meat and vegetables, that they'll be able to eat feasibly on a fixed budget so that by the end of the month they're not running out of food, and also that they eat foods while they're still fresh, that is before they've expired because they were forgotten. These problems can be challenging for people who've had cognitive disorders because they require a lot of independent reasoning tasks. Maybe you haven't thought about that. We might have to assess what foods we have that are on hand and determine whether they're unexpired. We then need to figure out what kinds of meals we might use them for and make sure that those meals would be appealing to us and whether we have the foods that would be needed to make them. If they're foods that aren't on hand, then we need to shop for them. And then when it comes time to make their foods, we need to recall or read a recipe, and then afterward deal with the leftovers. When you're on a budget, it's even harder because in addition to being appealing, you're going to want to minimize the money that you spent to augment your foods on hand. That is, minimize the amount of shopping you do. And you're also not going to want to throw away wasted food, either because you didn't like it or because it's gone bad before you had a chance to use it. We consider this a research problem. And the hypotheses, the things you could test by actually coming up with solution, are these, that you might want to influence behavior. So for example, differences in planning to eat, that is deciding on a recipe or what you need to buy, correlates with differences in negative behaviors, that is skipping meals or wasting food, both of which are not good for health or your budget. A second hypothesis is that being able to review your past food behavior will correlate with differences in positive things. That is, eating a more balanced nutrition. In our project, we were going to design a piece of software. Doing this requires several steps. First, we had to map the key tasks that we wanted to support onto software functionality, and then design experiments to test our hypotheses. Then in our project, we created and deployed a prototype called Track Your Food. Then we designed a research study where we use the app with a small sample of subjects and collect feedback from them about how it went. Then we look at the results, where we have results of different sorts. We have a pre-test survey, we have the usage of the software itself, we did some surveys along the way, and we also did a survey afterward. The tasks, so this is the first part, are listed here. So in order to use the software, users are going to create a profile that includes their preferred budget and the types of food they either want or need to eat. So for example, they might be vegan or they might need a low-carb diet. The software would also need to support searching for recipes. And that should be biased or sorted based on the profile, based on those foods on hand, and based on how long it takes to make them. The software would also support creating a shopping list for missing ingredients. It would also allow the person to keep track of the foods purchased, the foods used, how long they're going to last, and so on. Okay. And then if somebody wants to go back and look and see what they've done, they should be able to review their purchases, their usage, their discards, what the remaining budget is, what the remaining food items that they have, in order so that when they want to do their next meal, they're all ready to go. This slide shows you a screenshot of the software itself as we implemented it. This is a screen for recording when food is purchased or used. You notice at the top, we can indicate where the foods are located, so that if somebody has a memory problem, they don't lose track of where they put it. You can input a use by date or take a default. Again, this helps you keep track of whether or not something should be used before it goes bad. And then to help somebody keep track of how much of it is left, we make it easy to record how much of it's been used. These screens show you a bit about reviewing purchases or usage of food. On the left, you see what's been consumed, that is eaten. There's a distribution across meats, bakery, and produce. That's intended to enable you to track your balance of nutrition. There is an item for visualizing the frequency of skipped meals, which we discussed as a negative behavior. And then on the right, your screen is about keeping track of purchases. So the distribution of shopping across restaurants, across online, because we know people shop for food in different ways. And then you can also track your total spending on each category in items bought. Again, the idea is that it would help you keep track of whether or not you were eating a balanced diet and whether you still had food money left over. In our pilot study, we wanted to assess several different things. Firstly, of course, we want to know if people will like to use the software. So we look at things like their reported acceptance of or satisfaction with the usability of the software and whether they continue to use it. And we also look for correlations in the data. For example, amongst behaviors like how much they shop and how much they skip meals. Okay. And then we also wanted to look at what the user said about the software. What were their preferred features? Which things did they use? Which ones did they say that they liked? Where we consider things like buying meals, purchasing foods, recording preferences, recipe searches, and so on. Or whether or not they actually go back and review their past behavior. All these things show up in a software log. Here, it shows you just a few of the results from our system. Okay, so this is based on a combination of the survey data and also looking at the user logs. And we used frequency of shopping as a proxy for planning. Okay, we know that people with cognitive disorders find planning more difficult. You know, that's part of how their condition is assessed. Okay, and we looked at, as say, shopping as a proxy for planning, but we didn't know if more or less shopping meant more or less and so we sorted our users in our pilot study into average shoppers, frequent shoppers, that is more than average, and infrequent shoppers. Okay, and then we looked at the correlation between the frequency of shopping and a negative behavior. Actually, two negative behaviors are shown here. One is discarding food, okay, and the other one is skipping meals. Okay, skipping meals isn't healthy for anyone, but it certainly can aggravate the health conditions of those folks we mentioned here. Okay, and if you look at the diagrams, what you'll see is that our frequent shoppers tend to waste or throw away the most food. And it looks like our infrequent shoppers tend to skip the most. Well, the critical thing here, I think, is probably skipping dinner. Our infrequent shoppers tend to skip dinner more often. Okay, and that's one of the things that sets them apart. Okay, it looks like they also skip breakfast more often. Okay, and so that might be something that we might want to attend to. Okay, so that gives you an idea of what you could see by tracking a system like this. So that's a little bit about the results. So what does this mean? Okay, and remember the goal overall is to support people who have cognitive disabilities. The real goal is to help them live more independently and be able to manage their lives better. Okay, and one of the places that it could go bad would be in not being able to eat well. And so I'm going to call that food insecurity. They might run out of money, they might forget what they have, and so even starve even if they have food in the home. And so in terms of policy implications, which might be interesting for folks from the Thompson Center, is that addressing such kinds of food insecurity is going to require more than just giving perhaps people more money. Of course, they need money to buy food, but they may also need more help on specific tasks like how they prepare to eat, because these things will be potentially challenging. Okay, providing the right kinds of software tools can help them. It can provide support for self-management. It can nudge people towards healthier behaviors, where the idea is that by showing people what improves their health or showing them what kinds of behaviors they have, they will sort of move themselves towards the goal without having to have you sort of nag them all the time or present outside pressure. Okay. The app can also help people who are helping them. So individuals, family members, supporting agencies, they can help, with permission to see how the funds are being spent and identify potential problems before they get to be more and more serious. Okay. So if we could, deploy this broadly, then I think we could make two good contributions. One is that the food dollars would go further and health outcomes could improve. That is, people would eat more nutritiously. And we could do this without requiring measures that might seem punitive. That is, setting more rules that say you have to eat this way. We are continuing to do work on this. They say we started with just a one-year project, but this is something that we find very interesting, and we have a goal of supporting more people. And so the idea is that going forward, we're going to look at technology changes that might support more simultaneous users. We're going to look at how we might be able to provide other insights by looking at statistics or preference models that are collected over a larger pool of users. I say right now we were just more or less doing a feasibility study, but with a large pool, you have a better idea of what preferences might be. We are going to look at our recommendation engine, because if you have more recipes in there, you might want to make some more fine-grained choices about how things are sorted. And so we'll continue to work on that. Another thing that we're working on with another student who's not shown here today is to come up with a process using natural language processing that will allow us to automatically reformat recipes so that they will be more accessible or readable to people who might have cognitive disabilities or brain injuries. That would impact both the organization and the wording. And that is my presentation for today. If you have any questions, I would love for you to, contact me, or you could contact Apoorv, who worked on this project, as he will be continuing with us at UW-Milwaukee.